Live streaming is on.
Hello everyone, my name is Clive Coldwell. I'm Group Editor of Electronics Weekly. Today's webinar will be available on demand after our live session, and it's accessible through the same link you're using now. However, we'd love to hear from you today, so do text during the presentation. If you have a question, please feel free to send it through the Ask Question tab at the bottom of the page. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. And finally, we'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks. Anyway, the theme of today's session, quite an exciting one actually, even though it's well known that security can build trust and accelerate digital transformation, many companies are still not embedding security into every new device. The cost of hacks is growing and consumer confidence is dwindling. Nearly a third of consumers who don't own a smart device won't buy one due to security concerns. And quite clear, a unified and collaborative approach to device security is the key to digital transformation at scale. So to discuss the issues surrounding this, may I express a very warm welcome to our host today, Anurag Gupta, Business Development Director of Platform Security Architecture within the Architecture and Technology Group at Arm. Over to you, Anurag.
Thanks, Clive. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion around overcoming IoT device security challenges. As Clive said, I'm Anurag Gupta, Director of Business Development, PSA Certified. So within PSA, I work very closely with OEMs and ODMs and their ecosystem in order to raise the bar of security within their devices or products. So today, during this panel discussion, we will look into as well as discuss various IoT challenges, both from technical as well as business perspective with industry leaders. Along with this, we will also examine the value of certification and how PSA Certified is simplifying the security journey for OEMs and ODMs by building trust in your devices. So for this hot topic, we have a very knowledgeable and experienced panel today with us, which includes Jan from Osram, Marco from Flex, and Pino from Eurotech. So I would request them to introduce themselves before we start the panel discussion. So maybe we can start with you, Jan.
Sure. So my name is Jan Münter. I actually work for AMS Osram. We just got acquired by AMS. My background really is, I was a security consultant for a very long time, been breaking stuff, doing penetration testing, source code auditing, etc. And after some time, it got repetitive, and I was trying to address the problems that I was finding all the time and help people fix them. And because I wanted to do this in a bit of a longer term context, I actually switched to the industry. And so that's what I'm doing now, trying to keep our product secure.
Perfect. Thanks, Jan. Looks like you're pretty hands-on also. Yeah, Marco.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity today. I'm an electronic engineer as a background, starting my career in Hewlett-Packard in consumer devices, and then after 6 years, I switched to Cisco Systems in telecommunication equipment for over 7 years. And then 15 years ago, I joined the Flex electronic manufacturing service company, pretty big, touching different elements of innovation and technology scouting for our customers. And today I'm leading a team that is a corporate team specifically dedicated to creating building blocks and systems for our customers, anticipating the emerging technologies and trends to speed up the technology integration.
Thanks, Marco. Pino?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. My name is Giuseppe Surace. Everybody know me as Pino, so make it short. Call me Pino, it's easier for everybody. So my background is in high energy physics. So I did 15 years in the basic research, working for the Department of Energy in the US for basically control system for particle accelerator. So security was a little bit important at the time. Then I moved on the private company. First, I spent 15 years in, not 15 years, 10 years, more than 10 years in telecom, working for Telit, up to the CEO position of Telit, that is a module supplier for telecommunication. Then 6 years ago, less than 6 years ago, I joined Eurotech as product and marketing officer. As you know, Eurotech is one of the players that is always involved inside the digitalization of the company, starting in 1992, providing small PC104 boards. So security was always important, and we always help customer in digitalizing as much as they can related to the technology available at the time.
Yeah, excellent, Pino. So I think during the discussion, we will get some very interesting facts and figures from you, both from telecom as well as the industrial perspective.
Yeah, sure.
So with that, let's start with digital transition. So yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So with that, let's start with digital transformation. With that, if we look on one side, it is unlocking new business opportunities across all industries. And on the other side, massive scaling of devices are bringing the security risk. So just to give you some stats from various research reports, I would say 84% of the companies who have adopted IoT have reported some kind of breach. And what Clive was talking about, nearly 1/3 of consumers, I repeat, 1/3 of consumers, which is 35% of the consumers, don't buy IoT devices due to various security concerns. So this, I would say, are the two sides of the same coin. And this is bringing a massive impact on the adoption rates as well as impeding the digital transformation. So Jan, let me start with you. As in lightning industry, digitalization is opening a variety of new possibilities, extending far beyond like just on and off switches of light sources. So with that, help us to understand what digital transformation actually mean to you and to AMS Osram.
So, I mean, let's start with the classical lighting industry, right? Actually, switching lights on and off is still pretty important because that influences power consumption, and that immediately means, next to possible cost reduction, also a reduced CO2 footprint, which nowadays is interesting. So really, I think one of the most obvious applications really was to sense whether somebody is still present in a given room. And if that is the case, if that is no longer the case, switch off the light. That was like the first step in that direction. But of course, things are moving fast. And especially when you look at AMS Osram, we're not only about switching lights on and off. It's also about emitting photonic applications in, with applications where you cannot really see the emissions, so it's not necessarily about visible light, but really also about such applications as LiDAR, which has some very prominent applications such as autonomous driving and so forth. And when you look at the combination that we now have with the merger with AMS, we have a combination of the emission technology on the one side and the detection sensing technology on the other side. And the development there will definitely be very interesting throughout the next couple of years. And without any doubt, greatly powered by software, and the switch from something that used to be very mechanical, just switching things on and off, to something that is driven by increasingly complex software, of course, also gives additional security challenges to us, which weren't there, when you had physical light switches. And there's also this other markets which may not be intuitive. We have such technologies as urban digital farming, which is really sci-fi and pretty cool. You actually grow produce in urban environments, and unexpectedly that is also more energy efficient than the classical production somewhere in faraway countries and then shipping that to wherever it may be consumed. And some of these markets are also really competitive, so security may be interesting also just because of manipulation, sabotage scenarios, and so on. So things you wouldn't immediately think of when you think of the lighting industry. Yeah.
Yep, that's very interesting. Maybe, Pino, when you look from Eurotech perspective, I say Eurotech is a globally recognized leader in providing end-to-end, simple and ready-to-use solution. So what does digital transformation mean to you, and how it is impacting the industry you are in?
Oh yeah, you're perfectly right. So yes, as I said in my intro, so since the foundation of the company was always providing building block in order to digitalize industry. Where for industry we mean different verticals, so the classical industry, or even moving to the transportation, or even to the medical. So in the beginning was just providing a small piece of hardware that led to move some data around a localized position, so very localized inside the plant, around a small part of the plant, or inside the car, inside the bus, or inside the train. Then this evolved. Mainly, the first evolution was when the M2M came. So you were able to, with the communication, using the networks of communication, you were able to basically transfer your data not only inside the plant but outside the plant. And so this is evolving the hardware, requiring more security, and also requiring more player in the ecosystem, because a single one were not able anymore to provide everything. And then the last but not the least is the IoT, the AI, all the things that are happening during this last time, that is completely changing the way that the digitalization is impacting any kind of our customers. So we can provide building block that can be hardware that connecting to the sensor, so you need security at this level, so very edge level on the field, and then from the field you need to transfer somewhere or elaborate the data on the field. You need to get the security available there, and then you transfer this to the backend. Backend can be inside the plant, or inside the bus, inside the train, but can be even from away in a cloud located somewhere else, or even in another country. So security is really impacting all the complete evolution of digital transformation. So from our side, we need to always to provide to the customer the trust that by using our building block to all the other players in the ecosystem, will let the customer to get safe their data in their journey. So this is the most important factor that will let the customer to choose to go for the digital transformation. There is a lot in our what we will see. There is still a lot of company that try what we call roll your own or do it yourself. So basically, they believe that they get more security by doing their stuff by themselves. But with the initiative like the PSA or other security initiative, this will bring more trust in the customer. You have more player on the field, large names, so the hyperscaler player, or even smaller company, but that made the security their first option since their foundation, like Eurotech in our case. So it is important this to build the trust for the customer. You need to secure that the journey of the data from the sensor up to the backend, if you use all the travel and your journey is longer up to the backend, you need to provide this security. The only way to do this one is a third-party organization. Cannot be the single company that will say, I can do it end-to-end, I'll provide 100% security by myself. This is not. It's just an ecosystem game. It's a play that we need to play together in order to provide all the trust to the customer. And we see this is happening more and more, especially in the last 2-3 years. This is really impacting the way that the IoT is really booming. Because even if the analysts forecast the hype of the IoT 2 years ago, put aside the pandemic, we are not in the hype yet. The hype is really related and a consequence to the security that we can provide to the customer. I went a bit longer.
No, that was points which we will discuss during the discussion. You picked up around building ecosystem, you picked up about secure by design, you also picked up security and relevance of security. So maybe we'll discuss that later, but those are very, very interesting and important point building up a secure product. So maybe go to Marco now. So Marco, at Flex, I'm sure digital transformation is very relevant to you and your customers. So would be good to get your view as how it is not only impacting, but also helping Flex as well as Flex customers.
Absolutely. So I can say that indeed we are seeing the digital transformation is coming. It started years ago and is providing a boost in efficiency and versatility, both in the design and manufacturing phase and for the end user. Inside, I would say Flex, as all the other industries, are embracing Industry 4.0, and the equipment in the factory lines are becoming more and more connected. And we can see that there are at least two kinds of smartness in the factory. One is that is local, that needs to be very agile and fast, and another level at the cloud level that is providing insights and monitoring what's going on as a trend. And all this information, as Pino already said, needs to be transferred in a reliable way and protected against cyber attacks coming from external world. At the same time, we see the transformation impacting customers and their product, because each specific, I would say, vertical market has its own peculiarities. For example, in the medical field, where we are manufacturing medical devices, the customer are interested in the transfer of data, in the encryption of data, in the authentication of this data, but also in achieving a better and safer way to control the device and improve the device over time. In a totally different market like automotive, we can think about upgrading the engine parameters of the control board to reduce power consumption or improve the management of the car. Or even in a vehicle-to-vehicle system, a communication system is important that the communication is secure and nobody can interfere and force your car, for example, to brake unexpectedly because it is entering into the data stream. So I would say that security is touching all the different aspects in the product life cycle, starting immediately at the design phase, where you need really to think about the right building blocks and a way to expedite the design cycle and bringing it to production in a safe way, ensuring that all the building blocks are operating according to standards and can be tested against standards.
Perfect. I would say very interesting views. So I think this would be a perfect segue to look into the security and how security is helping to build trust and accelerate digital transformation. So in fact, PSA Certified did a research with more than 600 decision makers within IoT industry, and we published a PSA Certified 2021 security report, and where we found that the significant barriers for IoT security with device manufacturers, which include regulatory fragmentation, risk and liabilities, total cost of ownership, and changes in consumer perception. So this exactly goes in line with what Pino was talking about. So let me go with you, Pino, this time. So what do you think, what are the challenges for an OEM or an ODM while deploying IoT devices? And why do you think it's taking too long for IoT security to be taken seriously? Is it technology? Is it infrastructure? Is it legacy or something else?
Oh, it's a mix of everything. It's a mix of everything. Take, for example, our case. We, as I mentioned before, we provide building blocks that go for really from the sensor back up to the back end. And especially on the field, sometimes you find very old legacy system where you need to connect, and providing trust between the connection, for example, very old PLC to a gateway, for example. This is not always available. So in order to build the trust, you need to show that the journey, as I mentioned before, is really, really safe and secure from the acquisition point up to the back end. So legacy is one of the main issues. One other thing is that, and you mentioned before, is that sometimes, or very often, you will find that the company have their own software or their own building block inside their production plant, for example. And you need basically to face with non-standard protocols that you need basically to fix or to adapt in order to be able to read it and transfer the data. So when we start designing our product, we need to keep a certain degree of freedom that will let us to encapsulate also homemade protocols or stuff like that one that do not always provide all the requirement that will bring all the security that we expect. So this is one of the things that is still slowing down some of the deployment, because legacy protocol or legacy hardware are still there. And some of the companies that are now facing the digital transformation are companies where the asset is supposed to live for 10 or 20 years. So if this asset is already on the field, you clearly understand that there is not the technology available in order to provide all the security that the customer is expecting. So the approach for the IoT, especially when you start with your proof of concept for the customer, is mainly the one that we call the retrofit one. So it's very, very difficult to find an asset that you need to connect that is already ready to get the new electronics, to get all the software protocol and all the other stuff that is required to have a complete safe connection and deployment. So large of our effort will go in order to basically try to retrofit this old system, legacy system, and to bring them in a certain state of safety and security, and to prepare the customer to move in the next generation of a product that will be completely designed to be secure and to be IoT ready or something like that. Moreover, now with the AI impacting very heavily on the edge, because some of the typical nurturing of the data that previously were done on the cloud now is done directly on the field. And so in order to do this one, you need to provide more security on the field. So AI can be from some way seen as a bottleneck or as a breaking point. But from my opinion, this will be something that will accelerate the deployment of the IoT. Because in order to get this and for provide new services also, you need to evolve at the edge level. And I believe that with the deployment of new computing capability at the edge level, this will really impact the hype of the IoT and all the IoT itself. Again, last but not the least, it's important for us when we design a new product, especially, for example, a gateway or part of our edge framework, together with other partners that are in the ecosystem, that we always keep in mind that we may expect to find some not standard protocol, not standard hardware, not standard piece of electronic that we need to interface, and we need to make secure like any other in the ecosystem.
Agree. Very valid points. In fact, that reminds me also of a report which I was reading for Symantec. They say that there are on average 5,400 attacks per month targeted on an IoT device. And with this, there is a 600% increase in attacks at IoT devices. Mm-hmm. So Jan, it might be good to understand your view with this, who you believe is responsible for security, because there are many players who are involved in this whole process, whether it's a chip manufacturer, whether it's a software vendor, whether it's a system integrator, whether it's an OEM, whether it's an ODM.
Yeah, that is not a simple question to answer. I think the scenario that we most need to avoid when we ask that question is a circular reference. You know, basically everyone pointing at everyone else, saying it's their responsibility to actually engineer security into the device. I think what really needs to happen is that everyone on the in the end-to-end engineering chain needs to take responsibility for the part that they build. Because ultimately what this is all about is about the trust relationship between well, a vendor, a provider, a partner, and their customers. And in the case of the OEM, of course, the software vendors are the customers of the you know, the silicon companies and so forth. So really, in order to get to a viable end result, what matters is that everyone takes the responsibility for their part into their own hands. Only through this can you actually achieve a secure end product. The qualifications are simply not there in any other places. So I really think the perspective that is the most meaningful here is really the customers. If everyone fulfills the security expectations of their customers, things should be fine. But there's definitely a lot of caveats to take into consideration here. The security requirements, of course, need to be laid out appropriately. You need to have the expertise to actually verify whether you implemented things correctly, whether you fulfill the security expectations. And so forth. In the end, it's all about really taking the necessary measures in order to fulfill the security expectations that your specific customers have. And of course, in the case of the OEM, the customers are usually end customers. And this is really something where I will have to say those are probably the people that we finally need to take the blame away from. You very often hear, yes, it's all about human error, and our customers are using the products wrongly, and they put them into contexts where they shouldn't be, and so forth. I think this is a fallacy. I think this is really ultimately a failure of the industry, because we need to be able to provide products for which are not as prone to the abuse in such scenarios. So when we talk about end customers, we talk about things such as psychological acceptance for security measures, ease of use of security mechanisms, implementing things securely by default, and so forth. And those are really the responsibilities of everyone in the chain that is actually building the device, and not the end customers. So please stop blaming them.
No, very interesting. In fact, I took two key takeaways from your discussion. Is that you are saying that you need to have an outside-in view, or in fact, everyone in the ecosystem need to take an outside-in view from the customer perspective.
The customer's view.
Yeah. And second is that it's not single person problem, but we need to build up an ecosystem so that we can fulfill the customer security expectations.
Correct. I mean, I think if one of the chains within this within this setup, one of the links in this chain is so weak that the others cannot perfectly build on it, you won't get to the final goal. You will not be able to build a secure device. So really, I think what is needed is an ecosystem in which we lift each other to a level that is actually then finally what the end customers actually expect out of the devices. I think this dilemma that you were mentioning earlier, that people have greatly lost trust in the security of IoT devices, is really due to the fact that that never happened in the first place. People were just starting to engineer around, and people had these expectations that, good best practices, best industry practices would be used by everyone. But when it came to security, that was simply not the case. So we just need to win that trust back, and for that, we need to have a security ecosystem.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Jan. So, Marco, I have got multiple questions for you. So with this, what do you think, what are the technical challenge in order to build a secure by design product? And due to this, do you think there are some changes into the product development cycle? And I also believe that you are getting some of your designs PSA certified. So how frameworks like PSA certified are helping you?
Sure. So starting from the first one, I would say that indeed design a product secure by design is a matter of finding the right spot between features and cost of architecture and the design time, considering security as a key asset to be designed. Typically, specifications in products are evolving during the design phase. Requirements need to be very stable and agreed with the customer And my recommendation is to have a sort of security expert inside the company and a good connection with partners to keep an eye always open on the specification and understand if the end customer has understood all the risks that are coming when you are exposing the device to a connected system. Typically, we can think about just a simple debug port that is left open can totally become a backdoor to expose entirely the device. A second thing, from an architectural perspective, is not just a matter of selecting the smallest chip that does the job, but requires an holistic approach at architectural level and understanding how you balance the hardware features and the software and the stack that is needed to run the security. And think about ahead of time and how these standards are evolving, and if there is enough room in your flash memory to handle the new upgrades that will be requested. Especially think about an evolutionary approach where the scalability is mandatory to switch from one generation to the next one. Second point is to consider the life cycle of a product in its entirety, from the commissioning at the end of the manufacturing line to the execution and use of it. Thinking about misuse, especially if you're talking about a medical device, is very important to understand where the product is used, by whom, and what kind of expertise they have. And finally, also at the end of life, how you dismantle the product and how it can still be exposed to hacking and learning from third parties. I would say also that from a design standpoint, where we need to accelerate the design phase, the cost of engineering is important. So leveraging an internal platform like we have a Flexino to test the different sensors and how they can be quickly integrated into a final product is very important. And this platform, we are very happy to have it submitted as a PSA level 1 because is a way to have an independent entity to qualify the security features inside, and granting that these building blocks can be easily ported from one generation to the next one, from one product architecture to the other one. This is boosting the portability of the architecture, is shortening the learning curve that is just spent once at the beginning and then is managed by all the designers very effectively. And also I see PSA as a way to provide a fast alignment to the legislations and the standards that are constantly evolving. So somehow it's also a way to speed up the design on one side and lower the total cost of ownership on the other side.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. And Jan, it brings me to a different topic, because as you were talking about that we need to think from the security requirements from the customer perspective, but you can also look from the regulatory perspective, right? And when you look into the regulatory perspective, you see a lot of fragmentation around standards and regulations. And OSRAM, AMS selling products in different regions, different verticals. I believe you have to deal with all this fragmentation. So what's your view around that?
Yeah, it's a mess. No question. And it's only getting more and more complex because everybody thinks they can do it better, you know? And the general guiding principle that I try to adhere to is that whatever the regulations say, just try and adhere to best practices, because with those, you will at least, approximate what these standards demand. And because ultimately, really, for the most part, what the standards are trying to achieve is to push you towards best practices. And so, really, what I think the most promising way to achieve this is to just adhere to what we currently know works in order to get the devices as secure as possible, follow the methodology that we know leads to something secure. And then if there are some very specific deltas that we need to address to achieve a certain certification, that we need to break a certain market, you can still do that after the fact. But really, when it comes to the engineering, the whole development phase, it's all about following what we know as best practices. You know, Charlie, Mike, continue mission, just go on as we know. If you if you try to proactively engineer or try to proactively follow every evolving standard and try to take the requirements into account that are laid out there, I think that gets very messy very fast. And really, what has worked so far is trying to do this the way we know we achieve something secure, and then when we see specific requirements, see whether there are any deltas that we still need to address.
Perfect. I think then this might be a good time to discuss about certification also, because if you look from the PSA certified perspective, one of the key aspects of PSA certified is certification by an independent third-party security lab. So with this, you have an unbiased lab and a certification body who is looking into your product and evaluating against best security principles and industry practices, which Jan was talking about, along with PSA certified 10 security goals. So maybe with that, Marco, what do you think is more relevant? Is it self-certification or certification by an independent third-party lab, and why?
Yeah, I would say that today I'm in favor of more in third-party labs. This is because when we talk about security, it is really dependent on the risk associated and the usage in the market. So each market application has its own security requirements, totally different from a car to a medical device to a consumer device. Consider that security is something that works well today, but tomorrow needs to be upgraded. So what is protected today, we have no grants that will work also the next year. So you need to keep the pace with patches, with improvement in the security and in the software stack. And we need support from our third-party labs to have an holistic view of all the different security needs coming from the different markets to be sure to incorporate the latest solutions. And typically there is another effect. For example, like when we are testing for EMC ASD, typically we run internal testing to be sure that everything works from a design phase, the design standpoint, and then we go out to a certified lab to get the final stamp on a recognized certificate. And security, I think, is the same. It's good to keep the design phase separated from the team that is checking the output of the design. It's providing a much higher level of trust in having an independent lab certifying it. And indeed, is also a way to have an independent review and be up to date with the regulations, but with a third-party labs, there is a much better way to handle it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, Pino, I believe when you look into your products, I believe you are planning for multiple certifications. So why do you think that's relevant and beneficial?
Sorry, I was in mute. Sorry for that. Yes, absolutely. We need to let's say, having third party providing certification framework and providing a certain trust and rules that we can follow will bring is beneficial from our side in the development and the design of the product. Framework like the PSA will certainly help to clean what is the current fragmentation. So a product that will get certified for those framework for sure will provide to the customer another build of trust, because there is an external third party that will provide the certification process. And this is extremely helpful for us because we can follow some specific rule. I would like to bring some example that is coming from my past working in the telecom. When you have such an organization or third-party organization that are providing specific rule for the development and the trust of security, this is really beneficial in the development of the product and is beneficial in the trust of the customer. So I believe that having more than one providing standards and certification rule for also from the security aspect, it's also beneficial for the developers like us, OEM like us, that are providing both hardware and software building block for the IoT and the edge AI.
Okay, interesting. So maybe let me move to risk and liability side of it. I had a discussion with a lot of OEMs and ODMs globally, and what I believe one of the key challenge with them is around risk and liabilities in this hyper-connected value chain. So maybe this might be an open question for three of you. Do you also see the similar challenge around risk qualification, risk quantification, and then the risk management side of it? And with that, do you think that there is a need for ecosystem to evolve? And if yes, whom you think or who could be the new players who could be added into this ecosystem?
This for me or?
Any one of you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As I said before, the ecosystem need to evolve. We'll bring a new player, and this will create more trust for the customer. For example, if you can, from our side and your side, we can provide the technology, we can provide the protocols, we can provide the building block for an IoT deployment. On the same time, we are not providing the capability of to cover all the liability for the customer. So the customer itself is selling their product to someone else, so they need to cover their liability if something is happening, a cyber attack, something is happening. So I will see that the ecosystem in the future will be made not only by technology supplier like we are, but also from external supplier from technology like insurance that are providing support and insurance to the final customer that anything is happening, there is a coverage, because the insurance is a trust the certification that the product provide, and then at that point is secure enough in order to be covered by an insurance. So I believe the ecosystem need to evolve. So player, and this is why I mentioned before, there will be not anymore someone that can say one stop, one shop. There is no way in the future. This is really a play for different player that are providing building block for the final solution, and they are not only technological player. We need to bring on the stage other player like the insurance that are providing trust to the final customer, that if there is a coverage from insurance point of view, means that all the chain of trust from the field to the back end is secure, at least let's say 99.9 secure.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very interesting point, that we are not only talking about technology, but we are also talking about business assurance for our customers. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Jan or Marco?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I was thinking about is, I think for risk management, and specifically such things as cyber insurance, the IoT world offers some very specific challenges, just because it's so highly niche driven. You have a lot of niche products, you have a lot of niche protocols, you have a lot of things that are very custom. And when you look at the way the insurance industry is currently approaching their cyber risks, they really work a lot with standardized approaches. They have big Excel sheets where they cross off certain points, and everybody knows, Windows XP isn't super secure. Everybody knows a QNX is a problem when you leave like the direct memory read and write open. So these things are easily checked off. But if you want to ensure an environment where you have a highly security critical device with a complete custom OS and a complete custom protocol, where do you even start? So I think this is a very specific challenge that we have in that area. And that is something that we can probably think about addressing in the long run, because this is by no means going to be a quick win, through an established landscape of security certifications that are actually meaningful. such as, PSA Certified. Because, you have a lot of hokey security certifications in other areas right now, as we're all aware. They're not necessarily particularly meaningful because they might just consist of, a very simple, superficial check. And in order to come up with a level of trust that is so trustworthy that even an insurer would bet their money on it, we need to have something that actually deserves the trust, and so something that is tried and true and proven, and that's going to take a while to establish until you not only have the certifications and a good set of requirements and people who can check on them, but until you have this trust so well established that people are actually willing to bet their money on it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with from a medical device perspective, design and manufacturing. Indeed, the risk management process is up from day zero, from starting as is run as a parallel process. And security is becoming more important because nowadays every medical device is becoming connected. Today we have a smartphone as an intermediate relay point with BLE transferring data, but when the data goes to the cloud. And we think just to mention remote patient monitoring and the big trend that we see in remote hospitalization, where you need to have medical devices at home transferring medical data with the right level of encryption and protection to the cloud. This is a critical point. Another key point is the need of enabling a remote firmware upgrade, which sometimes is needed for security patches or for additional features to be integrated. And then this is the key case that customers are requesting, to grant that the firmware can go down in a proper way with the right root of trust to enable the firmware validation, then the boot and the operating system bring up and the application layer bring up. And this requires a pretty big framework. And with PSA, there is indeed a way to start from something that is validated, qualified, and expedite the integration of these functions in every medical device. And I think it's a matter not just of who is designing or manufacturing the device itself, but is more at the partner's level in the whole data chain and the whole ecosystem. Each one has to make its own part to grant the overall solution, I would say.
Perfect. I would say with a panel like you, we have a lot to discuss and learn from you all. But in the interest of time, before we get into Q&A, I would request each one of you as what will be your one piece of advice you have for our listeners.
Yeah, I can start from my perspective. I would say do not undermine security is important. I see medical devices like insulin pump being hacked and other devices being tampered with. It's important that we integrate security in the architecture from day zero, and we keep an eye monitoring how the security is evolving over time during the entire design frame.
Yeah, also from my perspective, I underline what Marco said, and also, as I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar today, it's we still found a lot of customers that believe they can do it, they roll your own, do-it-yourself stuff, and this is really bringing a security concern because, as we multiple times said during this event today, we need multiple players that focus on building block and providing a trust of chain related to the capability to provide a trust ecosystem all together. There cannot be, again, end-to-end, one-stop shop, roll your own stuff that will be secure in the future. It's just about to be part of an ecosystem with the policies and the rules for the security, and someone like the PSA Certified that or other committee organization that will provide the grant of the security.
There are two things that I want to strongly recommend. Number one would be get out of reaction mode, break out of reaction mode. A lot of people, a lot of companies still approach security from a reactive perspective. Like they either do penetration testing and thus find out about the fact that they may have some security problems, or they only address security problems when they are reported to them by their customers. That really should not be anyone's approach in 2021. As Marco and Pino have already been mentioning, security really only works correctly if you do it from the beginning. So really my strong advice is to start taking security requirements into your requirements engineering. Think about security as soon as you possibly can. And this blends into my other recommendation, which really is don't try and achieve a better level of security simply through the acquisition of some tool, some static analysis, dynamic analysis tool, etc. Yes, they can help, but they won't help you much unless your people are properly trained. And really the best security investment that you can make is work on the security knowledge that you have in-house. Usually, really the best application software, firmware security people that I know have previously been developers, and architects. So really invest into people more so than products. That's really what I would strongly advise.
Perfect. So what you're saying, be proactive, not reactive. Thanks for the great advice. So with this, I will hand over to Clive to take us through the questions from the listeners, for myself, or any of our panelists. Clive, over to you.
Thank you. Great last point, that, Jan. Very, very well put. Well, we have one first question from Julian Fink from Deloitte. What do you think the future of IoT is? Will it reach a plateau or keep growing in the market? Well, that's a pretty general one, but we could go on for hours doing that one, couldn't we?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I believe that if you look this from the analyst side, we already reached the hype, but it's not. It still need to grow. We didn't reach the number that the analyst forecasted a few years ago. So I don't think that we don't even reach the plateau until now. And I believe that we have in front of us, even because the technology is evolving. So we just put a title on this technology. So previously it was M2M, now it's IoT, and now it's becoming Edge AI. So I believe that this is still growing. It's a market that is growing, but need to grow inside the specific boundaries and rules and policies that will bring the security as first asset to be followed.
I can say the same thing. Looking at the trends in the silicon manufacturers today, you can buy a sub $1 chip that is providing BLE connectivity with encryption services, and these chips are addressing disposable applications. So think about smart patches, small medical devices, single-use syringes. They are getting part of the IoT evolution and revolution, and we will see more and more of these kind of devices sending data that needs to be protected to the cloud.
I think so too. The hardware keeps getting cheaper, more integrated, and so we'll just see more and more in other places. There's no way we've reached the plateau yet.
No, it's pretty exponential, isn't it? Really could go on for a long, long time, and we just don't know what the major problems are ultimately. But we do know that security is one of the major things we need to address now and be proactive about it. I think we've known that for years, but it's only now that we're actually putting this sort of thinking into practice and really sort of banging people over the head to really sort of get involved with it, really, which I think is fantastic. Valentina Ibanetti, how about I pronounce your surname okay, Valentina, from Kaizen Softworks. What would you say is a tangible solution for assuring security in IoT devices? Not sure I don't understand the question there, but I'm hoping you will.
I think the question is like what a tangible approach looks like, right? And really, what I always try to encourage is a secure development lifecycle. So when you look at like your whole product lifecycle, the idea really is to engineer security into every phase of development. And when you do that and you do it properly, you actually come out with something secure. So that means security needs to go into, like, you need to have actual security requirements. You need to do security reviews of your design, do such things as threat modeling, do proper security testing, ideally integrated into the development with static analysis, dynamic analysis, with quick feedback, especially in such environments as, agile development with CI/CD. And one more thing that I just want to repeat is, invest in the security knowledge of the people who are building the products. That really is the best bang for the bucks that I know in that area.
Yeah. And when you talk about security, as Jan was saying, it's not one-time investment, right? It's a continuous investment. When I say continuous investment, in terms of your resources, in terms of your policies, in terms of your guidelines, whatever you're talking about. So I think you need to continuously invest into that, and you have to continuously raise the bar of security within your devices.
Okay. Lakshbal, how common are the physical attacks? I mean, the ones that directly target the chip.
I will happily take that one because I used to break stuff, right? So, very common. Depending on the operational environment that you're in. The general rule of thumb is if you can make money through breaking it, people will absolutely do it. If, especially when you think about secure devices such as digital rights management that was broken in the past, or when you think about car security, things like these, people will physically reverse engineer your chips. Make no mistake. If you want to look into some interesting research in that area and people who do good work in that area, I can recommend Christopher Tarnowski and Dmitry Nedospasov, short Nedos. He's Nedos on Twitter, Nedos, November, Echo, Delta, Oscar, Sierra. Highly recommended, both of them.
That's interesting.
I would say also that even if it's not common, but just one single attack from a hacker just for fun can make a big damage to your reputation, to the market, especially in the medical field, for example. Just because one debug port was left open, you may ask a full recall from the market to calm down the users in the market, and that is a really big damage.
Yeah, and it's happening more often than what we think. And it's in some newspaper you can read that there are hackers that are asking for ransom in order to return your data, and they go directly from the digital from the physical side of the chain. And they're also important that this is happening also in the different operation. Even if you think that you have the most secure deployment, then you are doing a device provisioning, a new device provisioning on the field, you need to be sure that it's deploying correctly, because this is happening very often in the device provisioning or during what you mentioned before, Mark, or when you do the update over the air or stuff like that one. So this is the very critical moment where this kind of attack can happen. So, but it's not uncommon. It's not common, but it's not uncommon.
Okay, Valentina's qualified at what you were saying. What aspects should a good software solution address in order to achieve security in devices? That's a very good question, actually. More specific.
Well, of course, there's only so and so much that software can actually do on the device,
Yeah.
right? So if your hardware design is already flawed in terms of security, you won't be able to software your way out of it.
Okay.
So that is one thing. But
Yeah.
in terms of how or what can software contribute there, when we speak about the operating system and the application software, really, it's all about the general principles of secure design, so like reduce the attack surface, close any services that are not needed, don't run things with excessive privileges, defense in depth, and so forth. Those are really the the well-established principles of secure design that need to be reflected there.
Yeah. And I think this goes back to your point, Jan, which you discussed previously, that what is the weakest link, right? Because whenever you talk about a device, whenever you talk about a product, when you talk about a network, the weakest link is the security of your device, of your network, of your product, right? So you need to make sure that the software is not the weakest link at some moment of time.
Exactly.
And again, when you're building up a product, you can look from different perspectives. You need to look at a silicon level, you need to look at a software level, and then you need to look at a device level.
And of course, it also matters, like the context in which the device is being used also matters. You know, if you have something that is actually physically rolled out to people, you have different attack scenarios and different attack vectors than when you have something that is, you know, connected to the internet. You know? So, those are, of course, things to consider. It depends on your threat model.
Okay. I mean, Marco, security and NB-IT in medical devices. I mean, I can't think of anything more pertinent at the moment. Could you provide any example that you kind of new functionalities that are mostly security sensitive?
Yeah, sure. For example, one project that we have been working on is narrowband IoT as a way to transport ECG data in a live way. And we created a specific encryption system to extract the relevant information from the ECG signal and encrypt it properly with the security certificates and send it over to the cloud. What we are seeing today is that the smartphone, as of today, is still the middle point. It's collecting data from Bluetooth and transferring data with 4G to the cloud. But the next generation of medical devices will use a narrowband IoT and CATM services, so without the smartphone in the middle. And it's important to select a good platform providing the right root of trust and all the elements to send the data securely and properly protected from attacks.
Okay. It leads to that general question, doesn't it? If you're building a world-class product, I mean, how do you is there a sort of approach to building a world-class secure product? And that's addressed to everybody, really. And that's I mean, well, I suppose it's impossible, isn't it? Almost, you can never be totally secure. But I mean, it's a sort of roadmap that you can actually recommend people have in their mind. As it's a sort of process of thinking as well as implementation, isn't it?
Hardware roots of trust will certainly help. And would be the first building block to boost all the other security features.
Okay. Marty Winion, what wonderful title, Delivery Hero Director of InfoSec. What a fantastic job title that is. Do you expect to see more government regulations come in place to regulate fixing of security weaknesses by OEMs, like nowadays the case with data protection regulations? What would need to happen with devices from which the OEM went bankrupt and updates are no longer
That's
possible?
all start in different regions.
Sorry, Anurag, what? Shall we? Did you talk then? I heard a voice come back. I'm not sure who it was. Shall we fix that? Shall we just ask the first one first of all? Do you expect to see more government regulations come in place to regulate the fixing of security weaknesses by OEMs, like is nowadays the case with data protection regulations?
I would say definitely yes, because if you see from different regions, some of those places are already implemented it, because when you look into US, you have got NIST 8259, then you have got state California law. When you come towards Europe, you have got some standards and guidelines in terms of ETSI 303645, you have got UK DCMS. Same way, Nordics is also working on placing two different logos in a system or in a product. One will talk about electric efficiencies, and second would talk about the security on a device. And same way in the APAC. So I would say, yes, it's bound to come and it's happening.
Okay.
Actually, Marty raises another interesting point, like what happens with devices where the vendor simply goes bankrupt then,
exactly.
You know? I mean, of course, you can't expect any security fixes then, you know? So really, I actually think the longevity of the vendor that you're buying the product from will actually have to be part of your risk assessment already. Like is this a vendor that you trust that may actually also be around for whatever the usage period of that devices that you project. If this is in the IoT world, we sometimes have lifetimes of like 15 years of devices. So really ask yourself, if I buy this, will the company still be around in 15 years? So of course, that's advanced glass orb reading, but I think that needs to be part of your risk assessment in these cases.
Indeed. Well, I think we're just about at time, but one thing I was going to ask Anurag, just briefly, what drove on to help found PSA Certified? I'm not sure I know, actually.
Sorry?
I'm not sure I know. We had to ask the question.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. In fact, let me give you some context and background. I would say this is not new for ARM. We have been doing this for years. In fact, ARM published their security manifesto sometime in 2017. And along with this, or in fact, along with mobile phones and IoT devices, you can find ARM in smart cards, mobile payments. What I mean by that, in all high assurance use case where security of devices or products is a main concern. So with this, I would say there were various reasons of building PSA Certified. Some of those are like solving one of the biggest challenge, that is security of the devices for the IoT industry. And the other thing is that make this whole process and framework easy to consume and easy to implement, because sometimes it becomes very, very difficult for an OEM and ODM for the various reasons which panel was talking about, whether it's time, whether it's resources, whether it's efforts, whether it's tools. The other thing is that we were also thinking to build a certification scheme where devices and products of our partners will be evaluated and certified by an independent third-party security labs. In that case, it brings a lot of credibility to them, because then they are not saying that their devices are safe and secure, but a third-party unbiased lab is saying that their devices are safe and secure. And they have evaluated it against best industry practices or against various standards and regulations. And most importantly, we are not trying to solve only the technical side of it, but we are also trying to solve the business challenge for our partners, like time to market, risk, and liabilities. So I would end by saying that if we all do this and sell this correctly, it will create a lot of opportunities and make the pie bigger for all of us.
Well said. Well, we covered quite a lot of ground there in an hour. I can't believe we've done that much, but there you go. Anurag, Pino, Jan, and Marco, many thanks indeed for being here, taking the time to be with us today. And to everyone, thank you for being with us. If you haven't managed to get through your questions, rest assured we'll get back to you. Hope you found today really useful. I know I have. Thanks very much. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.